Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. Happy Tuesday.
It is nice, beautiful, sunny day. That's what my toddler says every morning when he opens the door. He goes, "Oh, it's a sunny day."
Oh my
He's
God,
like,
that's so cute. We
but he
all
says
need
it even
that
if it's like
energy.
raining. It's not. But I'm like, well, that's a good way to look at
I love that attitude. That is
it.
awesome.
Well, thanks for getting on here today. And like I always say, I know we'll keep these short, but I was excited to jump on with you because we unpacked with Alex just like a really short but very packed episode on the listing journey. So like from the marketing standpoint, just that kind of quick run through of like where your property goes when you list with Sotheby's International Realty and with Gibson.
Mhm.
And then you and I were talking, it's like we actually talked about you a few times throughout the episode, and it's really, I think, so important for us to dive in. So can you give your just introduce yourself and we'll kind of get into your role?
Yes. So my name is Becca Logue. I'm the director of communications here at Gibson Sotheby's, and I've been with the company for 6 years total as of this month, which is awesome. And I handle publicity for our listings and for our company. I also manage much of our content and communication strategy, be it our website, our email communications, the language in our advertising. And I work directly with our social media manager, Shannon Bullen, who is incredible at what she does. But primarily, my focus is media relations. So, building relationships with press in an effort to secure news coverage for our properties. And that's what I'm excited to chat about today.
I love that. Yes. And I feel like it's important to note that your role is unique, even throughout the brand, I would say. I've really not met a lot of companies who has someone specifically focused in that PR region, but definitely in this specific region that we're in, talking about, different competitors and things like that. I don't see this role. I think a lot of people outsource or they
Mhm.
try to, you know, repurpose someone in marketing, but like, if you could kind of dive into just what that big difference is between marketing and PR, I think that would be helpful too.
Yeah, no, you're so right. In my conversations with other affiliates in the Sotheby's International Realty Network, a handful of them will hire a PR agency to execute their PR, which is fine and definitely does the job for some. But what I love is the opportunity to be in-house here at Gibson. And when it comes to securing news coverage, like I'm just super proud to be a part of this brand because it really is the most profiled real estate brand in the press. Like our properties are covered in the news more than any other real estate brand, which is amazing. And in addition to me here on a local level, I'm backed by a really robust PR department at our corporate office to help generate exposure for our listings. But what you mentioned about the difference between PR and marketing or advertising really is the best way to think about PR versus advertising is paid while PR is earned. So with advertising, you control everything. You control the copy, the images, the size of the ad, exactly when and in which publications that ad will run. PR is a little different. I feel like it's everyone's favorite because it is free publicity. However, with PR, you have much limited control. So I've built like really wonderful relationships with journalists over the years and know how to pitch them and work with them to steer the message of a story. But we can't guarantee a certain headline or read an article before it's published. And we can't guarantee whether or not a journalist ultimately agrees to cover a property. So that's kind of the key difference between PR and advertising. And also, I think PR and marketing are definitely related. I am on the marketing team, but those are also not exactly the same thing. I think both are concerned with promoting a property or an individual, but they go about it in different ways. Marketing is very focused on promoting a product, such as a listing, in order to sell it. And that often involves paid advertising. PR, on the other hand, is focused on securing favorable news coverage and maintaining a really positive reputation. And we use more tactics like press releases, media relations, even social media to get our messages out. So those are kind of the primary differences there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such a key piece is when we're sitting with sellers, we can talk about that listing journey, what's guaranteed, where it's going to go.
Yep.
But the thing about PR is it's really not up to us. So could you talk about sort of, I know we'll try for really anything, in terms of like doing the best we can for our sellers and for our agents, but
Yep.
I know a lot of times people think it's price points that are going to make something special, but a lot of times it's just a unique property and it doesn't have to be an astronomical price point. So can you walk through what type of property or even what type of event might be something that you'll run with to try to get those placements?
Yes, great question. So there's a couple questions I ask myself or ask the listing agent before pitching a listing or a sale. Because to maintain like mutually beneficial relationships with journalists, it's important that I bring them the most compelling properties that I know will pique their interest. One thing I'll say to your point is that what's fun about my role is securing coverage for a listing that might not have a clearly defined hook. So even a $700,000 home that simply has like a rec room, that might be a fit for a journalist who's working on a roundup of homes with that amenity. That being said, I'll definitely be very honest and transparent if a listing simply isn't a fit for PR. Usually it's because of the photos. If they're not furnished or just aren't visually appealing, reporters usually won't agree to cover it. But back to the questions I ask myself. First, the biggest subject that journalists are interested in is notable public figures and celebrities who are buying and selling, even if they're a celebrity regionally or locally. So journalists love to write about their decor, the history of living in their homes. The media also loves to write about record-breaking listings and sales. And one thing I want to mention about that, if you're a listing agent, anything you share with me about a celebrity seller or a record-breaking price is completely confidential and off the record until I agree with you and your seller to move forward with publicity. Because some sellers, as you know, are super private and prefer not to engage journalists at all. There's also historic properties. The media loves historic homes, as well as homes of really architectural significance. Like, for example, if your listing was built by Frank Lloyd Wright or Neutra or some other star architect, as they call them. Another one is, does the listing answer any superlatives? For example, is it the largest home in town? Does it have a pool the size of like a regulation football field? Something fun like that, almost like yearbook style superlatives. And then lastly, does the listing have a really rare or luxurious amenity? So that angle is really popular among local and regional media. And I like to time pitching those listings with current trends happening in the world. So,
Sorry.
no, you're good, bless you. So,
Thanks.
for example, the Olympics begin in July. Between now and then, I'll be looking for listings with Olympic style amenities like multiple sport courts, things like that, and use the Olympic angle to secure some news coverage of those properties.
I love that. I was going to say those end up very seasonal too. Like we're looking at fireplaces in the winter, we're looking at pools in the
Yes.
summer,
Yep. Yep.
things like that. And that's something to keep in mind, but you don't have to keep those things necessarily in mind. If you're going to launch listing, we're going to walk you through like what angles we could take, which I love. I also think it's so important to underscore the messaging, as you had kind of talked about, is just, I feel like, you and Colleen and I are constantly kind of going back and forth, like what we're seeing. And right now is just such an interesting time with the media and the real estate. We're sort of like right out there and on top, like front of mind for everyone. And I think it's so important to hear from real professionals that are on like boots on the ground every day, what's going on. And you've helped us so much with that for our agents, for our leadership, just to be sure that we're reaching out with really what's happening
Mhm.
to the media. And so that's the really good side of this too, is that would be really difficult otherwise. It's painful, you see things, what really is going on, but it's so hard to correct that messaging. And you do
Yes.
such a good job of maintaining and nurturing those contacts and being able to have that open conversation of this is actually what we're really seeing. So I don't know if you want to get into any of that.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a mix of being proactive in reaching out to press in the midst of a new development in the industry or something that's shifting how realtors are doing business nowadays. It's a mix of being proactive, being aware of that news, and going to journalists and offering up our expertise in case they are working on a trend story, because oftentimes the messages that can get disseminated through the media can be they don't cover the whole story. So
Sure.
I like to make sure we're positioning our senior executives and our agents to be able to contribute to trend stories happening locally here in Boston, like in the Boston Globe or the Boston Business Journal. On a larger scale, if the New York Times is doing something about what they're seeing from the national or global market, it's important to communicate to them, well, here locally in Massachusetts, we're seeing this.
Yeah.
It's a mix of being proactive and also reactive. If I see that a journalist I'm friendly with has published a story and has a certain take on the market or something going on in the industry, and we have a slightly different perception, I'll reach out to that journalist and say, hey, I'd love to connect you with this agent on our team or someone from our leadership team who are primed to share more about what you said in this article. So it's definitely a mix of being proactive and reactive in those moments.
What I would love to talk through, because the way that Alex and I structured this conversation, and I feel like this is kind of the same here, is helping our agents. If you're one of our agents listening right now, or a Sotheby's International Realty agent, or you're an agent listening that has, this to offer as well, which there may be, I think it's important to be able to convey this to your seller. Keep in mind, so either of us, as well as anyone on the leadership or marketing team, is always happy to join you in a listing presentation to walk people through this. But if we could sort of conclude, Becca, with just some stats, because I know you're so good with like our share of voice and knowing that,
Yes.
but also any anecdotal story, like anything that you have, that examples that we could give of how this has really helped to sell a home, something that someone could bring to the kitchen table and really sway the seller.
Definitely. So first, a few numbers. I know I mentioned the Sotheby's International Realty brand and how it's the most profiled real estate brand in the news. It dominates globally share of voice in both volume and reach. And we have marketing assets that include these numbers for our agents to bring with them in listing presentations. But volume is the number of press placements about our brand's listings. That is a 25% share of voice globally compared to our competitors. Then reach refers to the quality of press covering our listings, meaning high quality outlets like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times with a 29% share of voice, which is incredible. And here on my end, we're averaging between 20 to 30 press mentions every month. So close to one every day, which is incredible and means that our agents and our listings are being mentioned in the press that frequently on a month-to-month basis. One anecdotal note I'll share is one of the primary advantages of PR for real estate agents is the ability to build trust and credibility with clients and the wider community. So our ability to secure like unbiased news coverage helps position our agents as experts in their field. And by showcasing their expertise, they can really establish themselves as trusted advisors. When they're going to a listing presentation, and I've been on several with agents to help them communicate this point, is PR can really help communicate a property's selling points to readers more than some other typical traditional marketing avenues can. So one recent example comes from one of our agents, Michael Selbst, who's out of our Manchester by the Sea office. He listed Nathaniel Hawthorne's, author of The Scarlet Letter, his former home in Salem, Massachusetts. Both Michael and the seller agreed to speak with press about the property, just some brief phone interviews. They highlighted the time Hawthorne spent in the home, upgrades that have been made since, the original features that were maintained, the current owner's favorite memories of living there, like details that you just can't effectively get across in a listing description or a Facebook ad, but that story, which ran in the Boston Globe, which of course was a lengthy story, it was able to communicate those details to the reader, and you just can't get that across via an ad sometimes, or just simply an MLS. So PR allowed them to really tell that story of that property and hopefully bring some interested buyers.
Yes, that's so great. And I think that that's really what I want to leave everyone with, because I think right now that's what everyone thinks of is, real estate's evolved so far, so
Mhm.
much. Specifically in the last 20 years, it's become less gatekeeping of information. So you say 20 years ago, even pre-MLS, things like that, what agents did was they had information on listings. And now there's all the information's out there, right? But now it's
Mhm.
clear that that's not the job of an agent, right? The job of an agent is so much further beyond that. And that's
Yeah.
something we're so far beyond. But I think that what people think of with PR is like, well, all the information's out there. And I think that's an important piece to remember is that goes along with all the other noise. All the information is out there. It is such a noisy world. Like I don't have those stats off the top of my head, but the amount of information people are processing. And when you get into the higher price points or you get into the unique homes, these are things that need this more than anything because the buyers aren't necessarily out there, right? You have an entry level home in a suburb in Boston that's, a busy, nice suburb that people want to be in, and it's at a first time home buyer price point. Yes, most likely people are going to come through there. Those are people that are searching. They're searching every weekend. They are on the internet. They're going to see, you still want good representation, but likely that your buyer is going to find you. If you have a really unique home, regardless of the price point, or if you have a really high priced home,
Mhm.
most of the time that's going to be maybe second, third, fourth home for someone. Those people aren't necessarily out there looking, right? They're going to be someone that lives in Manhattan and might pick up that Wall Street Journal and read that story. And that is something that is of a huge interest to them, or they have a colleague or friend that is, or son or daughter. So it's realizing that if you're in that category where if it's unique and it's very special, that's probably going to be a very unique buyer. And that's why this is so incredibly important, because you really do want to cut through that noise and be able to tell that story and be sure you're getting in front of all of those eyeballs. So I think you just do such an amazing job with that. I can't believe how efficient you are. I don't believe that you sleep. But I did want to bring you on just to, like I said, you came up so many times, your name and your role when we were talking with Alex. And I
Mhm.
loved how clean that episode was. Just this is exactly what happens. But then there's this sort of gray area, the intangibles of what more can we do? In these conversations, if you're having with your seller, this isn't something that we can guarantee, right? That's a different conversation at the kitchen table. It's not this guaranteed journey of the property and exactly where it's going to go. But that's the beauty. We have both. This conversation is understanding who Becca is, what she does, and everything we will do to be sure that we get any property out in front of as many eyes as possible and out in the press, and just telling the story and really putting thought into it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on today. Did you want to leave everyone with anything else?
No, I think you nailed it. I feel like it's just that third party validation also. News outlets are very picky and discerning about the properties they cover. Not so picky that we can't find an opportunity for, whatever listing. We'll definitely find a hook and an angle. But if they just decide to cover it, that third party validation is huge for a reader. It really helps that property stand out. Which is fantastic. And I think a good rule of thumb is when you're bringing on a listing or sale and you think it might be newsworthy, definitely email your office marketing coordinator if you're here at Gibson. You're also always welcome to reach out to me directly. Many times I'll reach out to an agent directly if I hear they're bringing on something unique or newsworthy, but agents are always welcome to contact me directly with any questions about the PR process. Um,
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. And
yes.
I hope to have you back soon. But let us know if you have any questions or anything comes up as you're listening to this. We'd love to chat directly.